ready? All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call the Tuesday, February 18th, Penn Manor School District Committee, the whole meeting to order. The next scheduled meeting of the Penn Manor School Board will be held on Monday, March 3rd, 2025 at 7 p.m. in the large group instruction room of the Penn Manor High School. An executive session was held prior to the Committee of the Whole meeting for the purpose of discussing personnel as detailed above. Mrs. Rhodes, may we have roll call, please?
Sure. Mr. Beeks?
Here.
Mr. Hurd?
Here.
Mr. Jackson?
Here.
Mr. Lombardo?
Here.
Mr. Strauss?
Here.
Mr. Swiger?
Here.
Ms. Wirt?
Here.
Mrs. Nafziger?
Here.
Dr. Fullerton?
Here.
9 board members present.
Thank you, Mrs. Rhodes. I would love to entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the February 3rd Committee of the Whole meeting.
So moved, Del Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. A second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Beeks. Any further comment or question? All those in favor?
9 affirmative votes.
Thank you very much. Board development opportunities and reports.
Yes, Fortune. There is an advocacy day coming, and you're probably going to have to help me with the dates. It's in the PSBA. I think it's May 13th or April 13th.
Hold on, let me look.
But the thing is that they've also set up Zoom so you can go in person. This Nafziger I went last year, but they also have Zooms with each of our local legislators already set up. So if you contact through the email, they'll send you the links so you can sign up, and everybody was represented. I got the links earlier, but I don't have them. So it's on the PSBA newsletter they send out. So you guys should be getting that. If not, Ms. Nafziger and I will send you a link.
Okay.
I don't know why I can't. April 4th
4th?
is the virtual event
Okay.
from 1 to 4:30 p.m.
Okay, but I know they sent me links personally as a liaison, but we can forward them on or get contact and they'll send you the link. But I know all our local legislators were signed up. So if you can't be there in person, like Nikki and I were last year, it's a good way to go.
Okay. Perfect. Any other reports?
Yes, Dr. Fullerton, all of you should have been in receipt of the minutes for the Lancaster County Academy Joint Operating Committee that I sent last week. Just a couple items that I want to point out. Columbia has decided to pull out of the academy and will now house their own students. But on the other side of that, Cocalico has decided that rather than participating as an ad hoc participant where they just send a student at a time as needed, they are coming on as a half member. So they will have 5 consistent seats, and that will also mean that they are included in our meetings and also have voting privileges. Also, we continue to look for another location to replace our HAC, our East Campus at HAC, because we are filled there. So anybody that knows any kind of a building that's close to 2,000 square feet, I think the current one is 1,750, would be nice to have a little office. A conference room would be wonderful, but if you know of anything, it could be, that's not unreasonable request. Our association with Crossroad Church for our West Campus up in Mountain Joy has been a wonderful partnership. So it can be any kind of a building where the students are safe, preferably that the bus, that's always a bonus if the bus has pick up and drop off there also. The director, Amanda Griffin, had already given a presentation to the superintendents after their meeting. I'm sure, Dr. Gale, you are a part of that, just to encourage people to join if they aren't already a part of the academy, and to just give them an idea of what's going on. And she had 2 districts that approached her after that presentation that are not current members that are interested in touring our facilities and finding out more about the program. And with that, I had asked Mrs. Rhodes to have a presentation of one of our 3 students that graduated in our January graduation. It's only a minute and a half, but I think you'll find it enlightening.
Glad to see you got your computer.
I do have my computer ready, but it did not keep the video.
Have you, has the academy thought about some of these building spaces that are located in some of these strip malls that are
That are
empty,
vacant.
Vacant?
We had talked, for example, I think the job lot there at Kendrick Square, I think half of that, we're just concerned that what they're gonna want is commercial prices.
Gotcha.
You know, Crossroad, we pay nothing. We give them a donation of a couple $1,000s a year, and that they include internet and cleaning and everything. Now, we certainly don't get that kind of a deal at Hack, but I think any commercial space is gonna be temporary, and also they'll ask more than what we're willing to pay. But thank you for that suggestion.
Okay, well, that's like that.
It's there, that's it.
Yeah,
There we
it's
go,
there.
there we go.
I would entertain a motion to get Mrs. Rhodes a new computer.
It's because she's using an Apple.
Yeah, it's
It's
right.
not bad, it's probably not set up to play through. We didn't anticipate.
It's played
the
in my
video, so
office.
It's the way things are.
Well,
So, yeah.
I mean, we could always do it at the next meeting. I'm hopeful that we can do it. I do find it enlightening, but we could always do it at the next meeting if
Yeah,
I did.
but then we sort of need to set up for this.
Okay.
I'll share it with
Next
everybody.
Next meeting or share?
I'll send it out to
Yeah,
everybody.
yeah.
Okay, all right.
Well, thank you anyways.
Well,
Mrs. Rhodes. Or
best
Ms.
made,
Ward.
best made plan.
I'm still waiting for a second or a motion to get Mrs. Rhodes a new computer. Any other reports? The IU report, I'll send that out to the board. Nothing of note. We, out of an abundance of caution, we had our meeting virtually. I was having flashbacks to COVID times when it was the Hollywood Squares and trying to deal with that. But nothing of note. We got a budget update, which I think they shared with the superintendents by now. Minimal, very minimal increase to our contribution for the services. Certainly get more out of it than what we're paying for. Okay. Mrs. Knapsinger.
Sure. For those of you who are not aware, the Education Foundation will be having a Alumni and Friends Spirit Night next Wednesday. And money raised from that will benefit the foundation, and it'll just be tips. So there's no entry cost. So if you are available, it's from 4 to 9 at Tobias Frogs next Wednesday.
That's what, the 26th?
6, something like that,
And
yes.
your event's the 20th this week, right?
Correct.
That Ms. Ward apparently has plans for.
Yes. And then board opportunities. March 3rd, those of us who have responded to Mrs. Rhodes, we have the IU Legislative Breakfast at 7:15 at the Eden. And then it looks like we have 2 new events on our calendar. March 26th is the FFA banquet. I believe we all got emails from the Ag Advisors requesting an RSVP by the 26th of this month. If you've never attended that, I'm a little sentimental, but it chokes me up almost every year, maybe just my connection to that department. But it's a fabulous time to see the accomplishments of our students and also their advisors who spend a lot of time outside of the school day learning. And then Wednesday, May 7th, is our Senior Athletic Awards at 6 p.m. And again, just another great time to celebrate the achievements of our students. And that's all I have.
I think, is there a spring play?
Yes, it is coming soon.
Okay.
Big Fish, and I think it's, I get the dates.
Okay.
March 13th. Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. Thank you. All right, so let's move on into our agenda, and we're right on time, starting late, so we'll get Mr. Forey to get us back ahead of schedule.
Will do. So, the last meeting, we talked about the tax rebate program. So some of the slides here are what we looked at as a reminder. It looks at tax rebate to residents of the district. They have to be property owners, they have to be 65 or older, widows or widowers greater than 50, or people with disabilities 18 and older. And remember, we talked about it, it follows the metrics of the state property tax and rental rebate form. So we looked at that, we talked about that 2 years ago, we raised it from 30,000 to 35,000. The state has subsequently continued to raise their contributions. And so after looking at this last week, we talked about, what are some possibilities. I did update a couple of these. We had a couple more that were processed in the last 2 weeks. We're up to 230 that have been paid in the current year. And we're up to $73,281 in the current year. So that continues throughout the year as we see that process. So one of the things that, as the board talked about this last week, was to try and understand, what can we do? What does it make sense to potentially expand the program, to potentially benefit, a greater benefit to those who are eligible? And so to understand, as we look at some scenarios, we need to understand how the program functions. So what this chart shows you is, if someone goes through, they fill out the state PA 1000 form, they bring that, they turn it into us, they've paid their taxes based upon their income levels, and these are the income level breakdowns, they're eligible for a discount off of their tax. And so that way it's applied so that, if someone has a high tax bill, they may be eligible for more because their percentage would be high, right? So it's percentage based in that. So the income driven percentage based. Right now, the current cap is $650. So I think when we were talking about the other week, there were some questions. Well, what if you go to $850? What if you go? How does it change things? So because of the way this structure is set up, I started looking at a couple possible changes. The reality of it is I think as you were asking questions, we were talking 2 weeks ago. If we change that $650, and I even raised it just to $1,000, so that's a pretty significant jump, it only impacts about 16 folks because of the percentages, the contributions they get, where their tax bill is. So the reality of it is, it seems like a big deal, but it really doesn't do too much. Like I said, it impacts about 16 folks in this current year. It would cost the district about an extra $4,500. So I thought, well, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't really, I think, what you were looking for.
Right.
So what else could we do? So the second thing I looked at, and if you remember those bands, right? The bands that we saw of what percentage off you got. And so I started playing with some of those, and I realized that that second to last band that gets the 15% discount, right now that's for an income to $12,000 to essentially $13,000. And I started playing with that band, and I said, well, if I take that band from $13,000 to $25,000 for an income level, it impacts 110 of those 230 individuals right now. And it costs us $13,400. And so, almost 40% of the people who are currently receiving the benefit would receive an additional contribution back. And then last I said, well, what if you did both of those things? If you did both of them together, you see it impacts about 124, which is more than 50% of the people that are currently in the program, and it costs about $18,200. One of the things that you do start to see at this is that actually some of these folks would actually get a higher rebate from us than they do from the state, because it also trickles down as their income goes. So I think that if you're interested in expanding it, allowing people to get more benefit, I think, probably either option 2 or 3. I think they're both reasonable. I think it gives us some expansion and some options back to folks. It follows the process which they're used to following and continues to provide some taxpayer relief. Questions on? So
I
that
would
would
be a
look.
proponent of number 3, because these are people that really need it, and for that small amount of money, I think it would be money well spent.
Okay.
So essentially, we'd go from 73,000 to 90,000.
Correct.
In essence, plus or minus.
Yeah, that sounds great, helping people that need the help.
Right.
Yeah, and it really, I mean, essentially all it does is that we change the green box on the column, right in our form, we'll update the form, we'll bring it back for your approval next week, or next meeting, and then we can put it out on the website and move from there.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
So we have three options. I heard you say you were a proponent of number 3. Does anyone want to make an option or a motion and choose one of those options for us to
I'll
vote on?
Well, I still have questions for you.
Oh,
Yep, go ahead.
I was looking at your scale. So people who make up to $10,000 per year only receive 20%, up to 20% off.
Their tax
20%
bill.
off their tax bill capped at $650.
Correct.
I mean, $10,000 per year is like, what,
Social
$200 a week.
Social
you know?
Security, yeah.
Can we extend the 100% discount to be further down the scale?
When you start to, I looked at a couple different scenarios, you know, like even just changing the 100 to like this, I essentially tried to double them up, the 100 to the first two, and then 90, and then 80, and down through. It starts to, you start to hit $150,000, $160,000 just because of the number of people that are there. I didn't, you know, I was trying to look at, hey, what can we do something, but at the same time, you know, implement a step. I think I'd like to implement this, go a year, and then sort of see where are we seeing, you know, more usage and movement out of it. It may be that more people hear about it, there's more value to them, and we may have more participants next year. I just don't want to come back with a $160,000, $200,000 cost, and we're like, okay, well, what did you just do?
No, it's it'd be impossible to budget it.
And I think the more we start to see participation, then we can make adjustments moving forward to see how that looks. It's one of those where I think, and I believe probably you support, I don't want to make a commitment for something that we find out that we can't continue, right, and pull back, whereas if we can step it up through.
And
They're eligible up to $1,500 from the state itself. So, you know, you're talking about possibility, you know, with going to 1,000 and these changes, some of these folks will be eligible for $2,500 off their tax bill with these changes.
If you make a quarter of their income.
If you're down on the lower end, but you're still 1,000 or more off between what the state does and what we do. You know, even down through there.
Dan, maybe this is getting too far into the weeds, but it might help answer some of the questions or concerns. The income that we're looking at, is this, like, does this include investment income they may have? Like, what is the criteria for income? Like, what are we capturing?
So the state form captures all of that type income.
Okay, so it's, in theory, all income that's not,
Per household or per deed owner? Person with the deed?
It looks like it's a person on the deed.
so,
Because we've had some individuals where they've lost eligibility because they've transferred the deed to
Right.
to a child and then,
Gotcha. But if I have the house deeded to me and my children live with me,
right.
they're only checking my income, not my adult
Correct.
children? Okay.
Right.
Just trying to understand so we have a picture of
Yes.
how the criteria is developed.
And just for clarification, the state rebates, we don't pay the state back, that's just right there, we're just worried, we're just concerned about the, in this case, 90,000 if we were to
Right.
go with the rate.
And the
Just
state
about clarity.
rebate, you know, works for, it's the property rebate, and there's also a rental rebate that's
Right.
part of the same form.
But
And a
the
heat
state
rebate.
rebating the money doesn't affect us in any way.
Any other questions for Mr. Ford? Three options are on the screen. I'd like to entertain a motion.
I have one more question that just popped in my head, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Would
I'm
we
not,
be-
I'm not asking for another motion.
Would we, I'll make the motion after the question. Would we be able to change the form for household income?
No, because we use the state
Because you
form.
use the state's form,
A-
so
and
we
that-
couldn't.
That way it works with their criteria and we're following along on it. We can change our discount percentages, but I think the qualification, the nice part is that way they're screened on the state side and all they have to do is show us their approved form and we don't have to go through the screening and understanding all that.
Yeah, I just,
I think, Joe, there's really four options, and one is these are possible changes, the fourth is no change. which
No
is what
change, you're
Dan
right.
had recommended 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
I'll make a motion to go with option 3.
Second?
Okay, so we have a motion, thank you, Mr. Swaggart, a second, thank you, Mr. Straub, to go with option 3. Any further comment or question?
Only comment is, Mr. Forey, can you put like a reminder in your calendar for next year to look at some of the suggestions that Mr. Swaggart gave once we have a better base of who's using? Thank you.
Seeing no other comments or questions, all those in favor?
8 affirmative votes,
Opposed?
1 opposed.
So I will bring the updated form to the next meeting for approval then.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Ford, rolling right along.
Rolling right along. So as we talked 2 weeks ago, the day after our meeting, the governor rolled out his proposal. So as a reminder, the budget update that we left 2 weeks ago, looking at some different scenarios, the baseline we had talked about at that point in time was about a $1.9 million budget deficit, assuming that we put 1.5 million towards projects and a 3% tax increase. So the governor spoke, he presented his budget the next day, and I believe that the Senate Appropriations is starting hearings sometime this week or next week. So a couple things that, just a summary of what we see here. The governor had a pretty small increase to basic ed and special ed, considering what we've seen in the last few years. You'll see that, you know, both of those are, you know, $142,000, $164,000 change over last year's state budget for us, if it got approved that way. What he did and continues to reinforce is this Ready to Learn accountability block type grant. If you remember, that's where we saw the $2.7 million increase in the current year. The governor is recommending another $2.7 million increase for us in that area, which is pretty substantial. So you take a look at it, you see that in the governor's proposal across those categories is about $3 million proposed increase. There are some of the smaller funds that they're still working through the details on that, but these are the big categories that we've heard so far. So the question is knowing what we know now, what do we think about, where do we go? What do we start planning for over the next couple of months? I think with the small changes in basic ed and special ed, it probably makes sense to use the governor's numbers. Even if for some reason the legislators don't approve all of that, at $150,000 change, that they can't go down because they're not allowed to go down because of a hold harmless. So I think it's safe to use that. The real question comes with this ready to learn, and is that extra 2.7 million next year coming through the legislators, and what does that look like? So there's a couple unknowns that are out there. We've talked about multiple times the unknown in the current year, right? So we ended up with 2.7 million more this year in the Ready to Learn than we had previously. We have realigned that. We did cover things, mostly salary within the budget, and so we do expect to bring this year a surplus based upon that actual funding. We'll see where that surplus ends up at the end of the year, depending upon some of our fluctuating costs with healthcare, cyber charter, transportation that we've talked about in the past. And then the real question is, what does 25, 26 look like on the state funding? As we've discussed and we'll continue to discuss, what's the board's desire in savings towards future projects, and then where are we at with the tax rate? So those are the things that are out there that over the next few months, some of those you have control over, and obviously the biggest one on the top, you don't. But all of them are going to come into play. And so we'll look at a couple of scenarios. How does this look? What happens? So right now, if we assumed we got all the governor's money that he's proposing, and we had a 0% tax increase, we would have about $1 million deficit right now. Okay? And that still has money towards the projects, and that's where we're at. If we had all the money that the governor has in his budget, and a 3% tax increase, it leaves us right now with about a $615,000 surplus. So obviously you see the difference in the tax increase makes on that. So put this in couple different scenarios. You can see, depending upon the tax increases, depending upon whether we got all of what the governor says, half of what the governor says. One of the things that I think I shared with you 2 weeks ago when I spoke to our state senator's office, the state senate is very concerned that they believe that the rainy day fund went from $6 billion to $3 billion. So they're not jumping on board with the governor's recommendation at this point. So you can see how the different scenarios start to impact whether we have a surplus or a deficit right now. You can see how the two intertwine with each other. Like I said, it's not for decisions tonight, it's just sort of understand, hey, what are those variables? How do those variables come into play? What does it look like? Questions on what the governor said, where we're at, and any of that so far that we've looked at?
Clearly, we'll know all the answers before we have to.
Yeah, no, that won't happen.
Before you have to open Christmas presents, probably.
Right?
Maybe before school starts,
Maybe.
but not before we have to have a budget done.
Correct.
Maybe.
October.
Maybe.
They did it before school started this year.
Yeah.
It was an election year. I know. Question for you.
Yep.
Just processing.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what the percentage of the governor's proposed budget we received from last year? So like, I know that we didn't get 100% of what he proposed. Actually, it wasn't probably that far off, but I think it was
it was probably in the high 90s.
I was gonna say, it was like in the 90%, right?
Yep.
Okay. That doesn't help us for this year. I just was trying to figure out if we can scale it back. Yeah.
So I hope that we'll have some more indication, but like I said, the big unknowns that we're still looking at is, what's that funding, what are we doing towards these projects as we see some updates to the next couple meetings, and then where are we at with the tax increase?
Okay. Any further questions for Mr. Ford?
I would just add, as Mr. Ford mentioned, kind of the unknowns that we're still working on. Again, as we continue to talk through this process, it's February, we have several more months. I think going back to the unknowns, obviously we can't do anything with the state funding. We'll keep our ears open, listening to what is being lobbied for and what the different P groups, you know, the PSA, PSBA, PASA, PASBO, all those different groups are really uniting to lobby for the state funding. But I think for us, as we continue to move forward, as we provide more information about some of the different projects and things, what is the board's desire with any, if any, savings toward future projects, and then the tax rate obviously plays into that factor. Those are, for the upcoming budget, that savings towards projects, that's our big question of what do we need to do with that. And then in years to come, obviously there's other things that we'll need to look at, but I think as the board provides us with more information, allows us to continue to whittle down and get the budget to a more accurate place. So just keep that as a focus and putting that out there. The other thing, do want to mention, if you look at, Dan, if you can go to slide 7. Again, this is you know, with full funding from the state and the 3% tax increase, assuming that we are putting 1.5 million. So again, that's where that money towards projects, that's what we're looking at. That was the target that we were given by Mr. Phillips when he was here to present from Raymond James. But obviously, depending on what direction we go, as we're looking at setting aside monies for future projects, that 1.5 is also up for discussion as well. We'll continue to let you know, though.
So, can you go back one more slide, Dan? Thanks. So realistically, if we don't put, because we're not sure of timelines, we're not sure of any of that right now, or what we're even going to need to borrow or any of that nature. So if I'm understanding, if we only put 500,000 towards future, 0% tax, we would have a relatively balanced budget. Is that,
If we get everything the governor says.
if we get everything the governor's, we can only go with what we
Yep.
know, right? We understand that. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. No action needed, so we'll move right along to the capital reserve plan.
Yeah, so the capital reserve plan is gonna look a little different, but I still wanted to talk a little bit about it this evening. So with the facility study, if you remember, we talked about it, they have gone through, I think they come next meeting, correct? With some proposals. They've gone through every building, and so what they're doing as we make a decision with regard to future projects, they're also providing us some input on things that need addressed in the other buildings, right? And so as the board starts to make decisions, yes, these are the buildings we're heading into. We'll use that probably over the next 2 months to then update, you know, what does the capital projects, the capital reserve look like. So we've gotten input right now. We'll present that after their next meeting. What the nice part is the walkthrough and update with the engineers is it's looking at those non-project buildings, right, the non-renovations. It's also giving cost estimates and priorities. So that's to come. But in the process, I just wanted to bring you up to date on another part of the capital reserve, and that has been our vehicles. And so we currently have a fleet of 13 trucks, 8 passenger vans, 2 cargo vans, and some tractors, mowers, all those other sort of equipment. And so when you think about that, if I have that number of vehicles, then every year I need to be looking at replacing 1 or 2 vehicles. And so in the meantime, I'm getting pricing, and I'll probably bring it to you before we get the capital reserve projects done, but I wanted to give you a heads up ahead of time. What I'd like to do this spring, and depending on the ordering, I think that vehicles are getting a little closer to being able to purchase. You know, at one point in time, a year or two ago, it was a year or two out when you tried to purchase a vehicle. I think we're down to weeks now. But we have a truck and a handicap van that are from 2010 that are both in need of replacement. And so what I will do is I'll bring those to you ahead of time if that's okay, and then we'll let the projects drive the rest of the building-related capital reserve type investments, if that makes sense. Is that okay with the board? Okay, so more to come on the capital reserve. It really is going to tie in now and backed up to the facility study. The other thing is we start to focus on which building we are addressing, then we'll also make sure that we're not doing short-term things in those buildings and how that realigns some things. Okay. And that's all I had.
Any, before?
Yeah, just going back to the presentation before this one, I think it would be really helpful for us to, you know, in working with the facilities committee or even the committee of the whole board, really start to try and narrow in on what the next future project looks like. And what I mean by that is, last year we had the architects come in, we saw some numbers and a couple ideas for a couple different options, right? For renovations at Latour, for new buildings. And now, you know, we had Ken Phillips in a couple weeks ago, and they did a really good job presenting to us. But they presented us an $80 million number. And I think for the board, it's hard to rationalize or really understand the savings number that we're looking at for the budget in relation to the destination or the goal that we have. And that's hard to do right now is because we don't know, we haven't found agreement or really even come to some sort of terms or even looked at plans definitively for what we're going to be building next. And I think at the board level, that makes it really difficult because we don't know if that 1.5 million gets us a quarter of the way, half of the way, the whole way. You know, we just don't know that. And so I think it'd be really helpful for the board, I know at least for myself, if, because I almost think we're doing this in the wrong order. We're putting the cart before the horse. Where I think we need to get better, we need to hone in better on what is that project and what is the goal, what's the number, what's the annual debt service number that we're really looking at, and really use that to guide us in future budget talks.
Mr. Forey, Dr. Egan and I have a meeting with Crabtree on Thursday. They're going to present us with some options. Next Tuesday, we have the facilities committee meeting, which will then talk about those options and then bring that to the full board in March. So that'll give us an idea of where the direction we would be going in terms of like what's the next project, what's the action time period, when are we looking at this happening.
Awesome, thank you.
Mr. Forey, have we kept up with that vehicle cycle? I'm just trying to remember, like,
We did not replace one last year, we did one the year before, so we're a little behind, so that's why I think that if we can get at least one and maybe two in the next couple of years, that'll help us.
That's what I thought. I think we bought a van or something,
There was, I think, two vans in 20 that are 22, and then there was a truck in 23.
So do you replace them according to mileage or age?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Okay, all right.
We look at a combination of both.
I assumed that you did, but I was just curious. You told us how old they were, but I was wondering what the mileage was.
Those 2010s are both the oldest and the most mileage on them.
Yes.
It was a correct answer.
Are you able to do what's called like a fleet deal, or do you have to go out to an RFP each
So
time?
we can
all buy all of the same, so your maintenance costs are lower?
we can purchase them via CoStar's contract. And so we will look, normally, we try and keep a similar model so that you have those prices, but we'll get prices from a couple different dealers for those vehicles.
Okay.
The CoStars, the fleet pricing has really almost disappeared.
Okay.
It used to be, pre-COVID, it was $5,000 to $10,000 off a vehicle. Now it's $500 to $1,000 off a vehicle.
But trying to get the same style vehicle.
But yeah, that way
gives
it's
you
same, a consistency, we're not,
There's cost savings there as well.
Correct.
I wasn't sure if you could do that or if you had to go with.
no, we can specify what type of vehicle.
Okay.
So
Thank
if
you.
we went to a dealer and said, we'll guarantee that we'll buy a vehicle from you every year for the next 10 years if you give us such and such a discount.
We could try that, yes. I'm not
I
sure.
mean, if we're gonna do this, if we're planning on replacing one every year to stay in the rotation, might be worth a try.
I can ask.
Yeah, I would say from experience with purchasing fleet-type vehicles, that typically if you stay with a dealer, you might not get a deal on the first one, but as you come back and are a repeat purchaser, they tend to give you preferential pricing, or when they have a deal, they'll call you and say, hey, I know you have a replacement cycle, and we have an extra F-150. Like, if you want to buy it a month early, we can really discount it. You know, like, so to your point, that can happen, but it's typically on the back end, not on the front end. Has that been your experience? That's been my
Yeah,
experience.
with the last truck we replaced, we had, the dealer that we've been using knew that we had one that was wrecked and called us up and said, hey, I have one on the floor here.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, because even though 1 or 2 a year seems like a lot for us, when you talk about the commercial folks, it's not really, it's not a big, they're going through hundreds of vehicles.
But we're an education institution.
Yes.
Remind them of that, yeah.
Yes.
That doesn't pay their bills.
They do not care. Maybe you should take Miss Wirt with you to help
I'll
negotiate.
see if Ms. Ward will help
Give it
negotiate.
a try. I would try.
You end up paying double.
Thank you.
50% more. Not double.
There we go, 50% more. She'll raise taxes 51%, we won't notice.
Yep.
Dr. Gibb, we have had a Chris Johnston-like presentation slate from Mr. Forey.
Okay, we'll keep up the quickness here, but tonight we do have on the agenda for approval for second reading of policies that we first looked at in January, so I just want to real quickly recap what we have. Again, a number of them are coming from PSBA, and it's a matter of changes in legislation as well as some court rulings. So we also have 2 that are coming from our school directors and PSBA, and those are new policies. So the first one, again, relates to organization. I think the big thing, this is coming from the Third Circuit Court, that if a school board director is going to be removed, there is the due process that needs to go through. Again, just a change in wording for organization. The next couple are dealing with student behavior and how we're reporting. Again, changes where it used to be reported to PCCD. Now it's being reported back to the Department of Education. So that's the changing in wording in those policies. In essence, the policy itself is the same, still dealing with student discipline with their students with disability, behavior support, and then threat assessments, but the changing took place with where the reports were going. Again, eligibility of non-student residents and tuition income. This is coming from Act 67 that does provide us with provisions for unenrolling a student if the parents are not living or guardian is not living in the district. There is an appeals process that we do have to follow, but at the same time, it does give us a little bit more teeth in that. Education for military children, we had passed a policy 2 years ago for us to, as when a military family informs us that they're moving into the district, we are to enroll their student as quickly as we can. In this case, the services of the National Guard or National Reserve were added to the other service branches. Employment contract board resolution, this was to include in a way for, as a professional employee, so that's anybody as an educator who is staying within the education field, they need to give us 60 days prior notice, in essence, meaning that the district can hold that person for 60 days. That was a practice, but it was not a policy that was put into place. And then if that person does leave before that, that is to be reported to the state. School security, again, this was changes from where the reports are going, PCCD, now to the education, but also is the requirement that in each district we have an on-duty school security person. In our case, as a district with our school resource officer here at the high school, we fulfill this requirement. The new policies that we've been talking about, one is the live streaming of board meetings. So from this point forward, we would maintain that live streaming. For a matter of fact and purposes for us, once we are finished, Keith will now upload that to the district YouTube channel. So it'll be there. And we said that it would stay live for a year. And then use of generative AI, again, guidelines, but really the most important factor is that we will continue to educate our teachers and students on the appropriate use of AI. That's something Mr. Reisinger and a number of our teachers, learning facilitators have been working with our staff on to make sure we are educating them properly. And then the opioid antagonist, this is to make sure, it gives us the opportunity to have medications that would respond to an opioid overdose. We do not have that on site in any of our buildings. Again, we would be relying on our emergency responders to administer that. We would need to do a lot of training with our school nurses to be able to prepare them for that, but this policy does give us that opportunity if we deem it necessary in the future. So those are the quick review of the policies that are up for a second reading. So recommended for placement on the agenda for tonight. Dr. Fullerton.
Thank you, Dr. Gale. Any questions for Dr. Gale? There was one question of clarification. Should this pass, would tonight's meeting be archived?
I think that's a decision that you all can make. You can either put it in, I mean, Keith can do it if we want him to, or we can put it in place next time.
We anticipated doing it, but it's your decision.
Yes.
Does anybody have any heartburn? Okay, so we'll then anticipate away.
Mr. Jackson, do you have a question?
Yeah, no, just going forward on the website, so we start archiving these things, do we have like a page just for each month as far as organization on our website?
Yes, they'll
So if
show
I
up.
want to go back and see October, I can click October.
Yes, there'll be, each one of the video recordings will have a date on it, of the date of the meeting, month, day. And yes, you'll be able to go back in time, just like any of our other videos.
But I'm wondering, that people have to search, or we're gonna have a page that you just click
Oh, yeah.
October,
Like a-
November?
There's a playlist for all board meetings.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. That's the word I couldn't say, playlist. Thank you, Keith.
Okay. May I have a motion to place this on our February 18th voting agenda?
So moved, Al Jackson.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson and Mr. Lombardo. Any further comment or question? All those in favor?
9 affirmative votes.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Reisinger?
I've really been watching the time and I'm super excited that now I have extra time for E-rate.
Oh, no, no. Cindy can get in there and edit it,
Right, at the time, it's like,
7:54
we are
to-
so far ahead of schedule that I will spend the
We'll go
remainder of the evening on this. So.
7:55 to
Mr. Reisinger, that hasn't
7:53.
happened yet this year.
It hasn't, that's right, that's why I wanted to take advantage of these. So let's talk about, this is our, just a quick reminder, this is our annual foray into the federal program that is administered by the FCC that provides us with discounts on technology-related expenses. So specifically, E-rate is giving us a discount on internet connectivity, on the transport for fiber between buildings, and also in our in-building connections and equipment. So it is tied to our free and reduced lunch population. That's based on our report to for the National School Lunch Program. And unfortunately, as that population of students has grown over the years, that's the unfortunate part, but the bonus to us is that in 2022, we hit the 49% level with our students. That actually now equates to an 80% off discount for us. So if there is any upside to those numbers increasing, it does mean that we're getting more federal money back because of the status of our student population. So again, quick recap. So there's two areas that we use E-rate funds to cover. The first is internet connectivity. So currently our primary internet circuit is provided by First Light. That's a fiber optic circuit that heads out in that direction and across the MU campus. We have a little bit of supplementary bandwidth on the Manor and Hambright campus, a 2 gig pipe there. And if you recall, several years ago, we built private fiber between all the buildings back to the data center, which is about 50 feet over that way. That's provided by Velocity Fiber. So that's what we consider Category 1. That's the nomenclature of the FCC. There won't be a test on that. That's considered Category 1 connectivity. The other piece, Category 2, is everything in building. So as you look around the spaces in the building, you see wireless access points. They are also eligible for E-rate funds. They're attached to walls. There's one right up there. The other element that we get funds for are network switches. So again, if you ever want to go on a little behind-the-scenes tour with us, I'd be happy to show you all of our data centers and all of our data closets where we have network switches, but again, they're E-rate eligible. Okay, so that's a little bit of history very quickly. I also want to pause for a second and go back a quarter of a century. All right, so what were you doing in the year 2000? In the year 2000, I should probably pause there for a second. What were you doing in the year 2000? In the year 2000, here at Penn Manor, we started an agreement with Millersville University for the university to become our internet service provider. So we approached them, it was an agreement with the university and the state system of higher education, and they provided us with internet access for free, right, starting in the year 2000. These are some pictures from the installation of the fiber optic conduit and cable. We bored across our campus over to their Science and Technology building and got a direct link to the university from Penn Manor High School. So that's what we were doing 25 years ago. Today, our primary internet pathway is still using, or primary internet circuit is still using that pathway that we put in place in the year 2000, and then was also part of the renovation and construction here for this building. So fast forward over the years, for quite literally a quarter of a century, there's been some changes. MU was our initial ISP until the year 2015, when we outgrew that connection, and using that same pathway through the university, we connected to the Kinber-Penryn network. So Kinber-Penryn was a $100 million project to string fiber between a number of universities across the Commonwealth and link them together to a high-speed backbone. Because of our partnership with the university, we were able to jump on Penryn, and it was great for us. It was low cost, it gave us new features, better bandwidth, but things changed in 2022. At that time, Kinber sold its assets to a private company called First Light. And we've been part of First Light, they're our current internet service provider, since that sale. All right, so that's a little bit about the history. So this year, our agreement with First Light is up. So as part of the whole E-rate conditions, we did an RFP for internet services to see if it would be First Light, the incumbent, or somebody else. Well, it's not going to be First Light. So we received 5 proposals from various internet service providers. Again, our incumbent, First Light, we've been paying $3,000 a month for 5 gigs of bandwidth. They did not come in as the lowest and most cost-effective vendor this time. The vendor that came in is Glo Fiber, with a 10 gig circuit at $2,500 a month. So they're actually coming in less than our incumbent for more bandwidth. So that's going to be our recommendation. That's going to be the contract we're going to bring to you next time. So you may have seen construction vehicles for Glo Fiber. You may have been receiving the little flyers that they have been sending out to various neighborhoods. I finally received one in my neighborhood saying construction has started. There's been trucks zipping around all over Millersville. So Glo Fiber is a service from Shentel, based out of Virginia. They have been doing residential fiber now for a number of years and also residential cable. They have been building out their network north and to the east, inclusive of Lancaster, for the past several years. They not only offer residential services, but business services as well. And the agreement that we have for them is business class service. So what they proposed, and what we'd like to accept, and also get the discount on, is 10 gigs of bandwidth that doubles what we have now for direct internet access, DIA. The other advantage, and what they include for free, is DDoS protection. So for those of you that are playing along in the network security game, DDoS is when you essentially compromise a large number of computers. You take them over, you set them up as bots, and then you use them to send a massive tsunami of traffic to one destination. Well, there are ways to mitigate or stop that type of cyber attack. It's called DDoS prevention, and this circuit will include that DDoS prevention at no additional cost. They are literally building down the street, and they are very confident that they will be able to have this up and ready for us on July 1, which will be the first eligible date for internet services to begin as part of E-rate. So that's where we landed. At $2,500 a month, if we didn't have E-rate, it would cost us $30,000 a year for this primary internet circuit. But because of the E-rate discount at 80% off, it costs us $6,000. So let that sink in for a while. Because we can use E-rate not only for our telecommunication costs, but also for access points and switches and things like that, we're going to save approximately $250,000 this year. I'll put the paperwork in over the next couple weeks to finalize that. I will add that we could pay a consultant to do this for $10,000 a year if you so choose, or if you don't want to do that, I'll continue to do it for free. So here's the bigger number that's more fun. What's that?
This on your
I
job
actually
description.
don't think that's in my job description, but that's okay. So,
Or
all
other
other
things.
duties aside, it's okay. I enjoy doing it. So here's the bigger number that's more fun. Over the past 8 years, we've saved over $2 million with the E-rate program. Now, let that sink in a different way, because I need to pull an alarm bell for something that's going to the Supreme Court on March 26th. Coming out of the Fifth Circuit, all right, so that's Texas and surrounding states. The Fifth Circuit, in a surprise move, ruled in favor of a nonprofit group that filed a lawsuit saying that the funding mechanism of E-rate is unconstitutional. The Fifth Circuit reversed lower court decisions that found it constitutional. They reversed that, and they said, the mechanism of funding for E-rate is unconstitutional. The Supreme Court is taking that case. They granted certiorari, right, which essentially means they're going to pick up that case, and they are hearing oral arguments in March. Should the Supreme Court side and agree that the Fifth Circuit's decision stands, it could dramatically jeopardize E-rate. Again, if they say, Fifth Circuit, you are correct, it's an unconstitutional mechanism, that means, by extension, the Fifth Circuit doesn't have to honor E-rate. By extension, no other district has to honor E-rate, and it could throw every single school and library that relies on E-rate into jeopardy, right? So I don't know how this is going to play out, but it is extremely alarming that this case is making its way to the Supreme Court. I can't tell you which way this is going to go, but as you can imagine, if we were to lose the 80% discount, that would be catastrophic to our budget, because as you see, we're saving substantial funds, not just yearly, but over the course of many years.
What is their objection? Like, what are they stating is unconstitutional?
They believe, so it gets a little technical and complicated, but the FCC has a private-public company called the Universal Service Administration Company. That is the mechanism by which service providers like Comcast, they pay into Universal Service, right? Universal Service then administers the E-rate program. They are saying that that entire mechanism is unconstitutional because essentially it's creating a tax. The legislation in 1996, as part of the Telecommunication Act, granted specific oversight of this new program to the FCC, and they essentially, the Congress said, hey, set this up, it is constitutional, we are directing you to create this.
Gotcha, okay.
That is now being, surprisingly, the Fifth Circuit found it to be unconstitutional. It was a surprise because no lower court and nobody, if I may editorialize for a second, in their right mind, would believe that this is unconstitutional. Charlie's editorial there. I am not a lawyer.
I like that tag at the end, but thank
I'm
you.
not
I
a-
appreciate the synopsis.
But yeah.
I've seen headlines, but haven't delved into it, so thank you.
So this is quite literally, I mean, unless we want to file an amicus brief, this is quite literally in the Supreme Court's hands at this point.
Is that on the docket for this year yet?
Yeah, in March. March 26th,
okay.
I believe, is oral arguments, and we should have a decision by the end of June.
Awesome. There's another variable for your budget, Dan.
Another unknown.
So we're going to act as if, right?
We're gonna try and get it done all before it happens.
Yes, and we're going to act as if, and we are obviously, because of the cost savings, we are going to come back at the next board meeting with the agreement for Glow Fiber. Because it's not like we can just suddenly turn off the internet pipes.
Okay.
That's what I got.
Thank you, Mr. Rasenberg. Any other questions for Mr. Rasenberg?
Any concerns around Blue Fiber's quality, customer service, any of those concerns that might affect?
No. I've spoken with 2 different local districts that have used their services, glowing reviews. No pun intended, I didn't try. But yeah, it's been great. We've done due diligence. I'm very,
I'm
very
sure you
confident.
did, but I just wanted to
Yep.
put that out there. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I would like to entertain a motion to place this on our March 3rd agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Wirt. Mr. Lombardo. Any further comment or question? All those in favor?
9 affirmative votes.
Thank you very much. Anything else for the good of the committee of the whole? Seeing nothing, I will adjourn the committee of the whole and move us right into our February 18th Penn Manor School District School Board meeting. Would you please join me for a moment of silence and the flag salute?
I can stand a little bit anyway.
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, buddy, thank you. For that little bit, that's good.
The next scheduled meeting of the Penn Manor School Board will be held on Monday, March 3rd, 2025, following the Committee of the Whole meeting. An executive session was held prior to the Committee of the Whole meeting for the purpose of discussing personnel as detailed on the Committee of the Whole agenda. Mrs. Rhodes, may we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Mr. Beeks?
Here.
Mr. Hurst?
Here.
Mr. Jackson?
Here.
Mr. Lombardo?
Here.
Mr. Stroud?
Here.
Mr. Swiger?
Here.
Ms. Wertz?
Here.
Mrs. Knapziger?
Here.
Dr. Fullerton?
Here.
9 board members present.
At each of our meetings, we allow our citizens to have 2 opportunities to make comments. This is the first opportunity to make comments about items on the board voting agenda. Do we have any citizens' comments on the board voting agenda? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the February 3rd school board meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Beeks and Mr. Straub. Any further comment or question? All those in favor?
9 affirmative votes.
Thank you very much. Dr. Gale, Superintendent's report.
Thank you, Dr. Fullerton. Want to celebrate with our high school students, especially those who took part and planned the Penn Manor Mini-Thon, which happened Friday into Saturday. As a total, the students raised over $27,000 that will go to the Thon at Penn State. This one was a little bit closer to home for a lot of us, as some of our students had a classmate that they lost a number of years ago, but then also one of our freshman students, Daisy Meyer, is a student who has benefited from the sponsorship of the Four Diamonds, as she has battled childhood leukemia. Thankfully, she's on her road to recovery. There was a nice article in L&P, I think it was Thursday or Friday, about Daisy and her family. So congratulations and thank you to all of our students, our advisors, Mrs. Kramer and Mrs. Paulette, for their work in doing that. And from what I understand, a student that Mrs. Kramer also donated about 8 to 12 inches of hair at the end of the event. So a little haircut took place too. Today, news out of Harrisburg was that the new Acting Secretary of Education was announced, Dr. Carrie Rao. Dr. Rao has served previously as the Deputy Secretary for the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education. She's provided guidance, support, and oversight to partners in the K-12 field, including school districts, approved private and charter schools, as well as career and technological centers in the Commonwealth. She's been with the Department of Education, but prior to that, she served as the advisor to the Deputy Secretary and as the Director for the Bureau of School Support. She's been in public education for over 25 years and has worked as a superintendent of schools in western region of the state prior to coming to PDE. So we'll be making that transition and receiving guidance from Dr. Rao. And then finally, I'd like to highlight 2 events that have taken place throughout this month. 7 of our high school students have qualified to participate in the Pennsylvania Music Educator Region 5, Chorus Festival. The students are Matthew Palmieri, who placed 1st overall in his voice part, Bailey Floyd, who placed 4th, Ava Wolfelsberger, who placed 2nd, David Fieri, who placed 2nd, and Jordan Chen, our piano accompanist, who placed 1st, Noah Toole, and James Helm. So those are the 7. The Region Chorus Festival will be held March 20th and 21st at Northeast Middle School in Bethlehem Area School District. So congratulations to these students. This is getting into like state competitions and across the state, competing with other students, but also in their selection. And of course, I'd like to congratulate our choral director, Lauren Simowitz, for her work with the students as well. And then at the elementary level, as many of you know, February is the time that our Lee Tort Elementary, they have programs where they called Leetort Loves Literacy. And this year, the community throughout the month is enjoying the book Ralph S. Mouse by Beverly Cleary. And students of all ages, as well as their parents, are encouraged to read this. There's different activities that happen on a daily basis, so the Leetort community is enjoying this, and we thank the PTO and the Ed Foundation for supporting this event that's taking place in Leetort. That's all I have, Dr. Fullerton.
Thank you, Dr. Gale. Any questions for Dr. Gale? Do we happen to have a score of the basketball game?
I don't.
Yes. Mr. Jackson?
I had it a minute ago. Hang on.
Do we want to know?
No,
Okay.
Okay, then never mind.
you really don't want to know. It was 79 to 37, Central York.
There's still time left.
No time left.
Oh,
The season is over.
oh, wow.
It is the first time since 2010 that both our boys and girls basketball teams made the district playoffs. Unfortunately, that run ended quickly for both.
Wow.
It's all right, room for growth for next year.
Yes, yes. So we'll move into treasurer's report.
So back to good news.
Back to good news, right? We have money in the bank, right?
We do have money in the bank. The report for January of 2025, balance sheet as of January 31st, 2025 shows $56,852,054.03, and there are bills attached for your approval.
Thank you, Mr. Flory. Do I have a motion to pay our bills?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Any further comment or question? Seeing none, all those in favor?
9 affirmative votes.
Outstanding. Let's take a quick review of our meeting agenda. Item 2, A and B. Any comment or question? Item 3, A through F.
Yes, I'd like to pull 3E.
3E, okay. Any other comment or question? And we'll move to item 4, A through F. Okay. May I have a motion to approve item 2, A and B?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Wirt.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Beeks. Any further comment or question? All those in favor?
9 affirmative votes.
Okay. Item 3E, may I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Straw. Mr. Swigert, any further comment or question?
Yeah, just, again, I'd like to thank the Education Foundation for all they do to keep our students doing what they're doing. Again, I do have a concern that, there's a core thing that needed to be purchased. I read the request from the teacher several years without a piano, and it's very disheartening that a core thing that affects lots of students we did not have a chance to purchase, and I know it's part of our retreat on the 3rd if we get to that point, but I just, our taxpayers are there to spend, to provide the things our teachers need first in the classroom. And again, we spent $500,000 in athletics last year, $750,000 the year before. Those are extracurricular things. I just, it just feels like we are struggling to put the priorities into the classrooms where they belong. That, extracurricular, that's where other organizations can support. Again, we put $500,000 in football uniforms last year for 34 students. Important, I'm not saying it's not, but yet, our core teachers that teach hundreds, if not every student. Again, it just feels like there needs to be an opportunity for us as a board to know and to help make those decisions. So, in the end, I think we owe her an apology, and let's get her a piano.
Okay. So we had a motion and a second. Any other comments? All those in favor?
9 affirmative votes.
Okay. We have a motion for items 3A through D and F.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Nafziger.
Second?
Thank you, Ms. Wirt. Any further comment or question? All those in favor?
9 affirmative votes.
Outstanding. And item 4A through F.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Beeks. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Straub. Any further comment or question? All those in favor?
9 affirmative votes.
Excellent. We have reached the second opportunity for citizens to comment on any district business. Do we have any citizens that would like to make a comment? It's been a while.
Good evening, Shauna. Looking at your board retreat items, thank you for putting all of them on there. I specifically wanted to say thank you regarding item 4 first, the bus stop policy review, regarding the bus driver who spoke last time, convenience related. I want to thank you for your promptness in wanting to discuss that and to see what can be done for situations like that. So thank you so much for doing that. I know you didn't get to it yet, but I see your part to do that, so thank you. The next one, item 3, the Title IX review. Thank you, Dr. Fullerton, for putting it on here, and whoever else was instrumental in wanting that back on here. I want to thank you for all of the decisions and work, not just the board, but administration, teacher, anyone who is integral in kind of making the policies that you've adopted and the work that you're doing with our solicitor and the special counsel, making that come to fruition. So I thank you for that, but I also would like to encourage you, so unless I missed something, which is completely possible, I don't think I've heard much about it since before the holidays, and so I just want to encourage you to continue working with the solicitor and special counsel, administration, whoever else, to keep that kind of fresh in your mind, that you're going to continue what we've started and continue considering like the gender, more about the bathrooms and the locker rooms, because I know that there were a lot of citizens wanting those things looked at as well. So thank you again for the work that you all do and for addressing these things.
Thank you. Any other citizens' comments? Seeing none. Anything else for the good of the board? It's hard to believe we'll be 2 months into 2025 by the time we see each other. Everybody enjoy your evening, drive home safely, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.